So this time of year, kind of as David was talking about earlier, many of my conversations with friends include conversations about what's happening in our gardens. Now, I have a pretty small garden compared to many of my friends, but it's still fun to get in there, get the ground ready, put the seedlings and plants in, and wait to see what's going to happen. And then it begins, trying to figure out how to keep the critters out. I've never had a watermelon that I've actually got to keep. Weeding, watering, and weeding some more, and keeping plants standing up when they start to become too heavy and fall over. And for me, trying to search out ways, natural ways to keep the bugs out, because they tend to be the ones that enjoy the garden more than I ever get to. And my dad was a big gardener, and there were these rituals that seemed to be a part of gardening life. The seed catalogs would show up when it was still cold and snowy, and then that always gave like this hope of spring and the promises of new growth. The seedlings would start in late winter and early spring, and they seemed to take over every single window space in our house. And then they would slowly make their way out in the garden. I used to watch my dad get the rototiller out every spring and dig up the huge expanse of garden in our backyard. And he and my mom would configure the garden sizes, plots for vegetables, plots for flower gardens. And then he would spend hours and hours in his garden. I think it was one of his ways to wind down after work and to de-stress. But it was also such a special treat to have a handful of peas or raspberries or strawberries put in your hand that were warm and juicy just from the garden. And our house was always filled with fresh flowers, and our table with fresh vegetables and fruit throughout the summer. But there was also an abundance then to share with neighbors and friends. And long before there was an official day called Sneak Zucchini Onto Your Neighbor's Porch Day, everyone in our neighborhood was leaving bags of zucchini and tomatoes for everyone else who also had gardens. And even though our practice of farming or gardening differs greatly from how it would have been done in the times of our reading this morning, there are still some things that ring true. Today we may spend time with more sophisticated resources tilling the earth, testing the soil, and guarding against weeds. But there is still a mystery in how that seed grows. We like to have the illusion that we can control many things. And we may be able to enhance a seed's ability to take root and grow, but no matter how we try, in the end, we cannot make it happen. And the parable offered this morning has the seed being scattered, but after that, until the harvest, the farmer's effort is negligible. The emphasis is on what God does when we're not looking, on all that happens for which you and I cannot begin to take credit. And this parable points out the hope that belongs to us all because our confidence in God is working, even and especially when we're not looking, and in ways that are mysterious and profound. So I believe one of the takeaways from this parable is the wonderful encouragement to simply do what it is that you and I are called to do by God and let the rest go. One of the gifts of this program is getting to that place where you really realize and accept that there is so much that we don't have control over. And thankfully, when we are willing to trust God, our experience will show us over and over again how God is working even when we can't yet see it. And it's okay to be in those kind of in-between places of wanting to trust God, maybe giving a little bit of ourselves over to God's care, and then we take it back. It's how we learn. We give a little and we take back. We give a little bit more and then we take back a little less. And most of us will continue with this dance with God as we learn and recognize that we try to carry far too much responsibility for what is and for what could yet be. I wonder how much more energy I might have, and I wonder how much more energy you might have if we simply did our part and learned to rely more fully on the hope that we've been given. If I learned more surely, like the farmer in our parable this morning, to simply scatter the seed and then truly leave the rest to God. So with that, one of my wonderings is, what are you excited about today? Are you excited about the growth that is taking place in your own life or in the relationships within your family? Because when we share our joys and concerns together on these Sunday mornings, so often, just like this morning, our joys are those places of gratitude for family and friends, for life and clarity of mind, for a second, third, fourth, or fifth chance at life and recovery. Are you excited and grateful about the opportunities for service and those good deeds that are all around you? And are you excited or grateful about the possibilities that come with recovery? What gives your life energy and enthusiasm? One of the things that we know about this disease of addiction is that when it takes hold, you're not excited about much of anything. Addiction ends up being more about maintenance and avoiding feeling worse, and isolation and depression set in. And we know that there is much that can seriously undercut our enthusiasm and dampen the joy of living. And with that, it's not hard to find a lot of evidence to justify feeling cynical, bitter, and depressed about life. And in fact, if you start looking for all the things that you can find to justify a negative view about the world, about your own life, about God, about others, then you will soon have more data than you will know what to do with, and great reasons to keep using. Several years ago, I had the chance to take a class with one of my professors on conflict resolution and consultation that would be for organizations and then for us, specifically churches. And it was designed to help us work with churches and organizations in helping them discover their strengths and their potential. And one of the questions that our professor started with was, the thing that is wrong with most organizations or churches is ... And then you fill in the blank. Then he told us, the answer that you have just given to this sentence is what you will be looking for before you begin to work with any group. This is your perceptual screen. If you are not careful, you will simply spend your time looking for evidence to justify the conclusion that you have already reached about this group. And I think that this is an important awareness for any of us to have. Because not only are we likely to find what we are looking for in organizations or groups, but we are also likely to find what we are looking for in life. If I believe that people are not trustworthy, or if I believe that people are just out to hurt me, I can find a lot of data to justify that position. And it is true that there will be people who are not trustworthy, and there will be things that hurt along the way. But if you believe that that's all there is, then that perspective becomes a prison that limits your energy and restrains your enthusiasm for the future. It is the perspective that leads to cynicism, bitterness, depression, and to be back in a drunk. It is a perspective that cuts the nerve of energy of joy. It cuts that joy in your life and keeps you from achieving your God-given potential. In this parable, we hear that there is a way that God does things. God is like a sower who scatters seeds. The seeds may be tiny and invisible to the naked eye, yet when the seed is planted, it grows into a shrub that provides shelter for the creatures of this world. If you believe that this is how God does things, then what will you do? Well, I think when we start to believe that God is at work in our lives, then we also begin to look for those mustard seeds. You will look for the first signs of faith and optimism. You will not be too quick to dismiss what sometimes can seem small and insignificant. You'll not give up on yourself, on others, on this program, or on your relationship with your higher power. And just because every day we can see those signs of brokenness and struggles and disappointments in the world, we don't give up, because we can also see that God's possibilities are in those tiny seeds of mustard. To believe this, is to receive the gift of a new perspective of yourself. Your faith may be no larger than the grain of a mustard seed, but if you can take a moment and look around and listen to the stories that you are hearing from those whose lives have been transformed by this program and their relationship with the God of their understanding, then you can see how the faith of a mustard seed can move mountains. You can do great things for God if you are willing to offer yourself to the one who has planted you in the tiny seed of love, generosity, mercy, justice, kindness, honesty, and service. It is possible for us to become so hardened in our living, full of resentments, that these seeds find no good ground in our lives. And Thomas Merton reminds us of an important thought. The mind that is the prisoner of conventional ideas cannot accept the seed of an unfamiliar truth and supernatural desire. How can I receive the seeds of freedom if I am in love with my bondage? And how can I cherish the desire of God if I am filled with an opposite desire? When you come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore your life back to sanity, you will recognize that God loves you and has blessed you. You are reminded that you are somebody who is special, not only in God's eyes, but in others' eyes. It is the denial of this basic fact and the cunning nature of this disease to live as if you and others are nobodies. And it is a rejection of God's will to live as if there is no hope for our future. And if and when you find yourself trapped in that kind of negative thinking, then remember the promises of this program. I think this is one of the most beautiful things that's written about this program. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us, and we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. These promises are an invitation for all of us to embrace this program of recovery and to embrace that relationship with the God of your understanding. This is not only a new vision of yourself, but also a new vision for the future. To believe that you are a child of God worthy of love and forgiveness and grace and a sober new start to life can lead you to believe these words from Paul, that I can do all things in God who strengthens me. Mother Teresa began her orphanage with a vision and resources the size of a mustard seed. She told her superiors, I have 3 pennies and a dream from God to build an orphanage. A dream and 3 pennies represented resources as small as a mustard seed. And her superiors gently chided her, saying, you cannot build an orphanage with 3 pennies, and with 3 pennies you cannot do anything. I know, she said, smiling, but with God and 3 pennies I can do anything. The parable of the mustard seed reminds us that God's beginnings may be small, but God's results are great. Those first 24 hours turn into another 24 hours. And then they turn into another 24 hours. And the results are great. Our task is to look for the signs of God at work in our lives in ways which may be no larger than a mustard seed. To live in love with a new perspective and to offer that perspective to others who are still sick and suffering in the bondage of addiction. No matter what your situation, God has something important for you to do. Believe that, and it will change how you think and how you live in the world. Believe that, and you will receive a new enthusiasm and excitement about life. Believe that, and the world will be different. Amen.